So what's it really like to travel China alone? Is it safe? How do I get around? How do I pay for things? These were all of the questions that I had before I traveled China in June, July. I traveled for 30 days by myself, solo girl on tour. So in this video, guys, I'm going to give you all my tips and tricks and why I fell in love with China as a solo traveler. Fun fact, I'm actually moving there in 2 weeks. So a little bit of context. I'm Tia. I've been learning Chinese for 13 years now, but I don't speak very proficient Chinese, so I'll just give that precursor. We'll talk about the language barrier later in the video, but I've split it down into a few sections for us, so let's get started. Okay, so the first section I want to talk about logistics. It's getting around and how to pay. So before you get to China, you need to download quite a few different apps. So the first thing you need to download is Alipay and WeChat. They both have English translation functions. I find Alipay and the mini programs are better, so you might want to use Alipay over WeChat, but basically in China, the idea of a debit or credit card does not exist. Well, it exists, but you have to pay with your phone with QR codes. So you get used to it, and it's actually super convenient. Actually, as if you live in China, you can now pay with your hand or your face. Like, the technology is wild. So the first thing you're going to do is download Alipay and WeChat. WeChat is especially important. It's kind of like Facebook Messenger, but when you check into a hotel, they likely have a WeChat mini program, like an app inside of WeChat, or they have a WeChat account and they'll ask you to add them, and then you can just message them if you need anything. So convenient. So that's how we're going to pay, QR code payments only. So the second thing I want to talk about is how to get around. So you're likely going to fly into China, right? Or you might fly to Hong Kong and just stick to the high-speed rail network. So sometimes people call it bullet trains, but they are the high-speed rail. So in China, they've obviously got subways or the metros, and then you've got the high-speed rail. It is so convenient. I did basically a circumnavigation around China. I will probably fill in my itinerary. Sorry, if anyone wants to match it, they can in a later video. But basically, I traveled for 4 weeks. I did not catch one flight, and I did all of China nearly. So we're gonna travel by high-speed rail only. The high-speed rail goes, like the trains go like 300 k's an hour. It's so convenient, so cheap, and you're just gonna have to stick to it. So also I want to mention, when you're in the cities, I did find some of the time that catching the subway was actually just faster than getting in a DD. So Uber doesn't exist in China. You have to use DD, which is a not Australian DD or a Western DD. It's a different app in the App Store. You can use a mini program in Alipay, but I just found it easier to download DD, the app itself, because I was using it quite frequently, and the DDs there are so cheap. So that's a little bit about getting around. If you've got any more questions, hit me up in the comments. If I need to expand on anything, I'll clip another video up for you guys. Okay, so section 2 I want to talk about is the food and the people. First of all, when we're talking to people, Google Translate will not work. So I would recommend to download Baidu Translate. You can obviously use DeepSeek, which is the Chinese AI platform, to help you translate, but I'd probably use Baidu Translate if I were to just pick one. Basically like Google Translate, but actually better, more colloquial expressions will come out. Food-wise, you want to use Meituan, M-E-I-T-U-A-N, for home delivery. So when you're in a hotel, to get a meal delivered, like $5 Australian landed in your hotel room. So it's so cheap, and actually I think a lot of Chinese people don't cook because of this. Like, it is so cheap to eat there. So yeah, you can factor that into your budget. About $5 a meal if you're just eating quite simply. You can obviously go out. I actually found that going out was a little bit more expensive, but it's just so comparatively cheap to Australia. So yeah, think about that. So we're going to download Meituan. When you're in restaurants, Chinese people in general are so friendly. So it helps because I can speak a little bit of Chinese, and not so much the speaking, but I can hear and understand a lot more than I can speak. So I would recommend, I'll put a link in the description of some phrases that I feel like you should know, like where's the toilet, can I pay the bill, questions like that. But in general, someone will help you. So you can always say, oh, I need to translate, but understanding that people will not understand when you speak English, especially when you're in the smaller cities. So if you're in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, a lot of people will be able to speak English, whereas like if you go to Jiangjiajie, which is the gateway to heaven, a lot of people will not be able to speak English. So just be mindful of that. You'll do a lot of translating, and a lot of the signs, they are bilingual, especially in the major cities. But when you get to the smaller cities, if you are planning to venture off the beaten track, you may find the language a bit difficult. But in general, Chinese people are so friendly. So I think there's a really interesting phenomenon, I would call it, when Chinese people come to Western countries. They appear as rude, but it's not rude. It's just the volume of people is like mind-blowing. Like you look at these train stations, you can have a look on my TikTok, my Instagram, and oh my gosh, like it is like we cannot comprehend how many people are in this country. And like for that reason, you have to push into the train so you can get on. So just be aware, like if you've got a little bit of anxiety around lots of people, like you are going to face a lot of people in China. Oh, I also wanted to mention, so in terms of the food, depending on where you're traveling to, the food will be very different. So the Chinese food that we eat in Australia is largely from Guangzhou, which is Cantonese style food. But you will see as you travel through different regions, there'll be a lot of different kinds of food. For example, in Xi'an, where the terracotta warriors are, there's biang biang mian, which is biang biang noodles. These are like thick noodles, this fat. The food is relatively spicy, but that's like the dish that's famous in that area. So it's amazing to go try different like local delicacies, and you can just ask for a recommendation from the waiter. They'll be more than willing to help. Okay, so section 3 of this video, I want to talk about where to go. So as I said, I'll share with you my month itinerary, and obviously as I'm moving to China, I'll go try all the different places for you guys and let you know my best recommendations on the weekends and such. But I would say the best course of action to plan your trip is to definitely have a look at YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, but actually RedNote is the best course of action. So RedNote is a Chinese social media platform. You can download it in Australia. A lot of the content is in Chinese, but you know, when the whole TikTok thing happened, a lot of people migrated from TikTok to RedNote. So there is a bit of English going on, but you'll find bloggers like myself who talk about their real experiences, and it's really good for when you're in a city to look for restaurant recommendations. So I found that to be the most reliable place to find like the coolest spots to go and what hotels to stay in, even looking at hotel reviews. I forgot to mention, so if we're booking trains and hotels, trip.com, that's what you need to use. Just download the app, it's all in English, super easy. And probably the one thing I want to shout out in the where to go section is I could not understand how safe I felt. So I guess in Australia, it's not unsafe, but I would never walk outside alone at night as a woman. Whereas in China, I was out there. Like people stay up late there. Like, you know, the culture here where you get up early, you go to sleep early, like that is not the case over there because, well, I was there in summer, but the nightlife, like places, the shopping malls are open till 10 p.m. You can eat, you walk into a restaurant at 10 p.m, they're definitely serving a lot of people and they'll serve you. Whereas in Australia, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. So yeah, I just want to flag in this where to go, don't be afraid. Well, as a solo traveler, I did make the rule that I didn't travel on the train at night alone, just because I was going to places I'd never been before, especially when I arrived in Jiangjiajie. I couldn't find my driver. It was dark. That was the only time I was traveling in the dark. And it was a little bit scary because I just didn't know where I was. Okay, now section 4, I want to talk about the emotional side. So I think the Chinese culture is so interesting, it's so deep, and even learning, for example, when I was at the Great Wall, I was not at Badaling, I was in Meitianyu this time, which is a smaller section of the Great Wall, and I actually got this recommendation from someone on RedNote of where to go. And yeah, basically Meitianyu was so amazing. There were not a lot of people there, but learning about the culture and what happened, the stories, like just super interesting. So I would probably recommend from an emotional perspective to balance your own travel versus hiring a tour guide. But yeah, the emotional side, to understand the Chinese culture and like all the history there, it was phenomenal. I think probably my key takeaway from the holiday too was like, you don't need to be in control of everything. Like, if you can't tell, I'm quite type A, but over there I just took the approach like I didn't really know where I was going next. I worked out that 3 to 4 nights in the same city was enough to give me a good grasp of the city, and then I kept it moving. I jumped on the train and let's go. Okay, so now in section 5, I've just got 4 tips to wrap up this video. Let me know in the comments if you like these tips or if you've got any questions about traveling to China. I think what makes me really happy is I have so many people asking me like, where should I go? I want to travel. Oh, it's so exciting. So the first one would be definitely download all of the apps before you leave, and also buy a Chinese SIM card when you land in the airport. So I assume you're landing in Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou. Buy a Chinese SIM card in the airport. I found the coverage to be really good, and it's just the easiest way to get a SIM card. So do that and pre-download all of the apps you need. So the main apps you'll need are WeChat, Alipay, Trip.com, and Meituan. That will get you through. You can use Apple Maps for directions if you have an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, you're going to need a map. It's just like A and then map. Also, you're going to need Baidu Translate to translate. So that's the first tip, download all the apps. The second tip would be definitely learn or have on flashcards these really important Chinese phrases. People, even if you can speak a few words, will just be like so thankful. The people are so kind. So that would probably be my third tip. Like, people will come up to you and it's not rude. People sometimes, from what I understand, have never seen a foreign face before, and so they're merely just interested. So don't think of the people as rude. They're just interested and they really want to help, and they love sharing Chinese culture. For example, Hanfu, maybe I can put a photo in the comments. I dressed up with my friend in Xi'an, and there were so many people just being like, oh my gosh, we're so happy that you dressed up in our traditional clothes. And obviously they were speaking Chinese to me, but that was the gist of it. Okay, so the fourth tip is definitely travel light. So as I said, you'll be catching a lot of high-speed rail when you're over there, meaning you want to just take your suitcase and keep it moving. So I ditched almost all of the clothes that I brought with me over there, and basically because everything is so cheap, like that's the manufacturing capital of the world, right? And so you can get really high quality clothes, like really cool. I did find though, so I'm quite tall, like I'm 175, and my shoe size is an Australian 10 or a 41 euro. I couldn't really find any shoes in my size, so you might just want to note that if you're like, definitely take runners and some sneakers with you. And probably the fifth like sub tip, I know I said I was just going to give 4, let me give you 5. So I found that the fashion is quite relaxed, which is really cool when you're traveling, but I probably had too many like fancy dresses that I just didn't need, but then I was obviously not going to ditch them. Like I needed to keep them with me. So that wraps up my experience as a solo traveler in China. I did 8 cities in 4 weeks. So I will probably post the next video about what cities I went to and what I would suggest to do in each city and why you might go there. But if you've got any questions, definitely hit me up in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. 再见, bye bye.